since divorce is really not just a legal problem, it's a social, emotional, psychological, financial issue. People are transitioning a life that is all about, their economic partnership and their parenting partnership. They're transitioning one life into two different whole lives. And it requires so much precision. You wouldn't ask a plumber to fix your roof. Why are you asking a lawyer to help you figure out what to do with your children?
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show. As a therapist who has been trained in collaborative law, I see personally the benefits that this provides to all involved, parents, coaches, and lawyers, but especially children of divorced parents. It allows for a much more collegial, immersive, and proactive means of separation. After all, if you're going to separate from your spouse, you might as well do it the right way. Therefore, it's with great pleasure that I have with me here today Dr. Lauren Behrman. She is a clinical psychologist from New York State who has been passionate about the care and concern of children from early on in her career. She started off as a child psychologist in the schools, but with the presentation of different opportunities and desires, she soon saw herself working mainly with adults as a means of protecting children's well-being and emotional fragility. With the birth of collaborative law, Dr. Behrman made it her passion to start practicing this with her couples and quickly saw the benefits. She then wrote the book, Loving Your Children More Than You Hate Each Other, Powerful Tools for Navigating a High Conflict Divorce. Welcome, Lauren. I'm so happy to have you here. So I wanted to start off the episode today by asking you if you can think of a time where you had to use the mindset, I think I can.
Sure, Luella, and thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to be on your podcast today. I'm actually going to talk about something that is kind of happening in the moment. About in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, my husband and I moved from the city up to a rural area in Western Massachusetts, where we felt it was less dense and it felt safer. We moved to this little town that had been my dream, really, to live in. I had summered in this town for many, many years, but could never kind of find the right place, time to actually own a home in this town. And so we moved into this absolutely beautiful little town and picked up the newspaper, the town newspaper, right after we moved, and saw that the town itself was in like the most awful conflict that I have witnessed, and I witnessed conflict a lot between divorcing parents and, in courts and everything. So this town was in such conflict where in this newspaper, people were like slamming each other and calling each other names, neighbors against neighbors, and very much involved the political, the governance of the town. So, I really was reflecting on that. And about in December of this past year, in 2021, I had attended a workshop by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Donna Hicks. And Donna Hicks is doing a workshop about her dignity model and leading with dignity. And I kind of got this idea that this town really needed that model. And so I said to myself, I think I can do this. And I contacted Dr. Donna Hicks. I sent her an email, had a phone call with her. She was extraordinarily understanding and generous, and completely got what we needed, and offered to do a dignity workshop for a dignity talk for our town. And really against all lot of resistance from the town, I created a dignity event that's happening April 14th. And just started writing articles about it for the Monterey News and putting it out there. And and then went around to different organizations in the town to get some funding and get some sponsorship to underwrite the costs of her speaking, which she was extremely generous with us. And it's happening.
Wow.
It's the, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of thing. So I think that's a good, I think I can moment to talk about.
Absolutely. Like, the courage it would have taken you to do that, because I'm sure, you're thinking, if you let others' thoughts, control your own behaviors, I'm sure you would have felt, oh, the townspeople are, no one's going to show up. And, what's the chances of getting this woman out here? What a great example. And what a movement. Wow.
Yeah. Grassroots is a big, I'm a big proponent of grassroots.
Well, and yeah, I think that's a wonderful point too. I mean, I think it always starts with one person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that one person's you. So
in 2001, right? But actually, going a little bit back, I began a chapter of this national and international organization. You may have heard of the AFCC. It's the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts.
Oh.
It's a group of judges and attorneys and mental health professionals, court professionals, people who are working with family courts and divorce, et cetera. But there was no chapter of this organization in New York. And New York, of the 50 states of the United States, was one of the most backward, conflict, nasty cultures in divorce. And literally, again, with the help of stakeholders, but I was the one who said, we need a chapter here. And I, at that time, hand wrote and addressed hundreds of envelopes, and created a space. There was going to be an AFCC conference in September of 2011, right around 9/11. And it ended up getting canceled, but I created a space and a time for anybody who was interested in a chapter to come together.
Wow.
And at the end, the conference ended up being in March of of 2002. And at the end of the day, there was this, a space, and I had sent out a notice to people and advertised it and talked it up. And I didn't know if one person or 10 people or 50 people would show up. And sure enough, that room filled. There were at least 50 or 75 people. And I walked out that day with the business cards of about 15 people, influential judges and lawyers and mental health professionals who were all part of, they created a steering committee.
Wow.
And we created this, and it's called AFCCNY. And that chapter is still vibrant today. And it literally, it was part of a whole movement, again, a grassroots movement that started to change the divorce culture in New York, in the whole state. And now we have no fault divorce, which we didn't have. We only had fault divorce. And there's all kinds of alternative dispute resolution happening in the state and in the courts, and collaborative law has flourished, and all kinds of mediation and all kinds of alternative ways of solving conflict.
Well, and that's a great segue into, sort of my next question for you, because I'm not sure if all, and by the way, congratulations on that. That's just another, I think I can moment. But I'm not sure if, all my audience really understands what collaborative practice is. And I want to know two things. I want to know how you fell into this sector of, psychotherapy and working with individuals and couples. Was it your intention after you graduated, to sort of go? No, I don't think it ever is for anybody. But
it's really actually quite a good story, and it is absolutely an intersection of, kind of how personal life and adult development and kind of can influence your journey in your life's work. So what kind of happened for me, I started out my practice, I'm in practice now 37 years. And
wow.
I started out my practice in early childhood special ed and learning disabilities and 0 to 5. I had, just kind of randomly got assigned to a 0 to 5 clinic and child clinic in my internship, and then ended up getting hired in a preschool special ed setting that was just really starting out. It was just around the time of the Americans with Disabilities Act had been passed, and that created funds for extending interventions to 0 to 5. And so I just happened to have gotten some of those skills in my internship, and I got hired as a psychologist in this program. And so I worked in early childhood special ed for probably 15 to 20 years, early in my practice, certainly the first 15 years, and developed very much of a child practice. I was seeing, children of all ages and working with their parents. So that was great and fine when I was a single woman and had no kids. It was really easy. I could work late. I could see parents at 8 o'clock. I could work after 3, was no problem, work on Saturdays. But fast forward to having gotten married and raising children. And one day, I actually had an office in my home, and I had 3 young children. They were 36 months apart. And they were on one side of the door being cared for by a nanny, and I was sitting on the floor playing with somebody else's children,
Yeah.
somebody else's child. And that was okay when they were babies. I was able to take them to Mommy and Me and all the different, musical munchkins and all the different things that you do with children. But once my oldest son went to school on a bus, like in kindergarten, and he was in a full day program, I started realizing that if I continued to see kids, I would never see my kids because I'd be working from the time they got home at 3, 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
and then seeing their parents in the evening. I might as well be doing business trips to Chicago. It's like,
Yeah.
so I very intentionally set out to find a niche that I could do in my work that would really allow me to work while they were in school and be free after. And I went to American Psychological Association, big convention, and I literally sampled different areas of practice. And I went into many different workshops, and all kinds of things, infertility and anger management and all kinds of things. I was kind of trying to try on different ideas. And one of them was a workshop. It was actually alternative dispute resolution. And there were different sets of people, the beginning of collaborative practice. There was, which sounded like a circus to me. There was high conflict co-parent counseling, and maybe something else. I don't, fully recall, but I remember sitting there and thinking, bingo, this is it. This is what I can do, because I wouldn't be seeing children, but I'd be helping children because I'd be helping their parents. So I trained at that point in high conflict co-parent counseling, and I started working with divorcing parents. This would be like 2000. And then that felt like a perfect fit for me. It was really, it allowed me to kind of go way outside my comfort zone in terms of dealing with conflict and learn how to do that from a different point of view, particularly from the point of view of being able to educate parents in high conflict about what that conflict was doing to their children.
Okay.
And that,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. And so, that, would bring us to your book that you authored, called Loving Your Children More Than You Hate Each Other. So
I feel like I didn't quite get to the end of my answer about collaborative practice.
Okay. Yeah, go back.
And then I'd be happy to talk about the book as well. So from the work in high conflict co-parent counseling, I got totally networked in with all kinds of people. That's when I got involved with AFCC and created AFCC's New York, and met all kinds of mediators and lawyers and people who were working with divorcing parents. And that's when I heard about collaborative divorce. And it was first coming to New York. It was 2004. They did the first interdisciplinary collaborative training. And I just felt like, wow, this is a revolution. This is a movement. This is amazing. Because what had initially felt to me like, what a circus, you have 5 people, 6 people working on your divorce. It made total sense that since divorce is really not just a legal problem, it's a social, emotional, psychological, financial issue. People are transitioning a life that is all about, their economic partnership and their parenting partnership. They're transitioning one life into 2 different whole lives. And it required so much precision. You wouldn't ask a plumber to fix your roof. Why are you asking a lawyer to help you figure out what to do with your children
Exactly.
or your
Yeah.
money? So I actually loved the idea of the
Mhm.
team. And I loved working on teams because that took me out of my silo as a therapist in my office alone,
Mm.
isolated, and really created community.
Mhm.
A really good, strong, interdisciplinary professional community. And that's been wonderful
Uh,
for me.
Agree. I've really appreciated
Mhm.
it as well, and it's worked really well during the pandemic as well. I mean, we're not all in the same room, but the Zooms have been fine for
Mhm.
that, right? So it's nice to have been able to continue that throughout the pandemic. But so yeah, back to the book then. At what point in the collaborative practice process that you embrace so strongly, as you said, did you feel the need to write this book? It's a great title, and um, you talk about in the book how you can teach couples skills to help them, you know, move through these cycles of conflict, for example. So can you tell me what was the impetus in writing the book and some of these skills that you spoke
Sure.
of?
So what I began to see, and I kind of mushroomed and grew the practice in so many different ways, because from the high conflict co-parent counseling, then uh, learning about the roles in collaborative divorce, and as mental health professionals, uh, we can be child specialists. Now we call ourselves family specialists. We
Mm-hmm.
could be uh, divorce coaches for one person or the other person, or we could be a neutral process facilitator for
Mm-hmm.
the entire process. So, there were many roles for mental health professionals. But I also did parenting coordination and mediation, and also would I started getting many referrals to work on some aspect of a litigated divorce, a parenting aspect of a litigated divorce where the attorneys could not, were not able to come up with solutions. And so they would, kind of carve out an aspect of it and ask me to help.
Mm.
And so what I began to see is, the population that self-selects for collaborative divorce or mediation is um, is not the population that loving your children more than you hate each other is really written for.
Mm-hmm.
That book was written for the high conflict divorce, the people and the high conflict post divorce, who simply
Mm-hmm.
um, cannot move beyond the antipathy and the acrimony, and they really have not been able to put the needs of their children first.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the population that book was written for. Um,
How much of your practice would you say you see those couples that you just described?
well, Luella, I I guess I got kind of a reputation for handling these very high conflict
Mm.
couples. And for a period of time, I had a fairly sizable um, caseload of couples. Um, so, but over the course of the pandemic, I found the pandemic itself to be a lightning rod for
Mm.
conflict in couples. And it was so intense, and it was so like draining the lifeblood out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of came to a place where I really decided I wanted to pivot my practice away from, you know,
Mm-hmm.
such a concentration of, deeply, deeply conflicted couples.
Mm-hmm. And like before, we logged on today, I was thinking about it in the sense of it, it can be in some ways it's very ironic when you think of it. The couple is separating and divorcing mainly, I think, due to, if I had to sort of describe what's the main reason why marriages, don't work or they break apart, it's like it's mainly because there's two individuals that are just too different, or they can't, communicate very well. Now we're asking them to communicate almost better, for the sake of the children, and live in separate houses and try to navigate all that, around it. So it makes sense why, why this can be very hard work, because logistically they're very different people. So what would you say is a good way of approaching this when you know that, like, how would you educate that couple in terms of, okay, you're separating because you feel you can't communicate, however you have children? What tools can you give these parents then in terms of doing a better job?
So, the there are a number of things that need to be done for these parents. And in some cases, it's really not possible because there are access to, there are personality disorders or
Mhm.
psychiatric disorders that are just so profound that
Mhm.
you can't penetrate, or but I would say that is a, a a percentage, and there are a large percentage of parents, really, really high conflict parents, that they once they understand the impact, what is their conflict is doing to their children, the children that they really both love.
Mhm.
I try to see the hearts in each of these people and appeal to the love for the children,
Mhm.
um, and educate them in pretty, using a lot of very strong metaphors
Mhm.
to explain what damage that conflict is doing and what damage they are doing to their kids.
Mhm.
And I would say that a large percentage of even, the couples that have been in litigation, have testified against each other in court, have had the ugliest, nastiest divorces. A large percentage of those parents, they're battle weary, they're
Mhm.
stuck, and they actually appreciate somebody providing a container for their conflict
Mhm.
and helping them, um, kind of with rules and boundaries and strategies, helping them pull their way out of it.
Yeah.
Um, it-
Yeah. That makes sense. It's the leverage. Sometimes just the idea of these innocent children is the leverage that you need in order to dampen the conflict, to
you
bring
see,
light to that.
what the system does, and I can't really speak for what it's like in Canada, but I
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
speak for what it's like in New York. But
Yeah.
what the adversarial system does is it takes two people who have the hardest job in the world as adults to raise a child.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes those two people and it pits them against each other. And it creates, these people, they may go in the courtroom in the morning and talk about, um, what a bad, unfit parent each of them is, or, sling mud at each other. They're in this win-lose kind of mindset.
Right.
And then in the afternoon, they have to go to a parent-teacher conference,
Mm-hmm.
for little Joey, who is being a bully in the classroom.
Right. Right. And then they have to be a team and a line,
Right.
and
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, a lot of the work with those kind of parents is pretty much tough love. It's
Mm-hmm.
confrontational. It's, hit them between the eyes.
Yeah.
Tough love.
Yeah.
And but I have seen it work.
Mm-hmm.
And work more like, how psychotherapy sometimes can move at the pace of a glacier?
Yeah.
Really, very, very, but I have seen this work break through very intensely conflicted couples, parents, when they get it, sometimes in a matter of weeks. I mean, it can be a very powerful work.
Yeah, I agree. I see the same thing, and it is very similar here as well. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, do you feel like, I think what you're saying is that, you've seen that maybe two parents have stayed in a relationship much too long, and often for the sake of the children, again, which is very ironic. They're doing it for the sake of the children, and then um but there is another side. I mean, once they do realize that, they're better apart than they are together, that there is definitely other options for parenting their children in a better way. And I mean, I've seen it, I'm sure you have as well, that now that they're separated, the children are definitely better off. And in other words, I'm just trying to bring light, to the idea of, how terrible divorce and separation can be for a child. I mean, there's a way of doing it very well and very healthy. And I think we can sort of, take away that stigmatism of, how terrible it can be for, children to have their parents go through a divorce.
That's why I've really embraced collaborative divorce so much, because I have seen, again, not every case, but I have seen many cases where the power of the team and the ability of the team to model, effective problem solving and conflict resolution and communication and brainstorming ideas has really left that set of parents and that family better than when they came in.
Yeah.
And I have seen some extremely good, healthy post-divorce situations.
Right.
Where, I mean, even a recent family that I had worked with, that, there was a lot of hurt and distress, but the collaborative process had allowed them to come to a successful resolution. 2 years later, I happened to get an email from one of the parents saying, "Oh, we rented a house together this summer, for a month." They rented
Wow.
a vacation home for a month.
See, another good example, because I was going to bring this up as well. What do you offer parents, like, because I sometimes see, how one parent wants this and the other parent doesn't. One parent wants to have all the birthdays together, perhaps a vacation together. We want to still show the children that we get along, we're friends. But then, to be honest with you, like, I find this is one of the most difficult part of working in collaborative practice, is that when after the couple has separated and divorced, there's often times where they found a new partner. And now that new partner is coming into the process of, the separation, divorce, and the parenting agreement, and they're having a lot of influence on, their partner. And I find that can really complicate things sometimes. It's because, let's say, like you said, oh, we want to have a month vacation together, with the children. I mean, if that person now has a new partner, I don't think the new partner is going to really be in favor of that. And I just wanted to bring that up, that I often find that that can cause a lot of difficulty.
It can. It's also possible to work with the partner. It's possible to work. Sometimes I've had meetings with the 4 people, parents and their new partners, 2 parents and their new partners, to really kind of strategize and talk about how they're going, where the boundaries are going to be, what their roles are going to be, to try to, again, quiet the conflict and get the 4 of them together working as a team. I always really talk about the biological or adoptive parents, the original parents of the children, being the decision makers, and the disciplinarians and the parents, and the step parents kind of being supporting actors, so extra adults who can love and support and the children. But I do try to create, as best as I can, kind of opportunities for those difficult conversations to be had, between parents and their new significant others or partners, when things are getting kind of they're going backwards from.
Yeah.
I had one family, though, where it really was not at all possible, because a partner was too wounded herself, and it just couldn't allow what had been a very healthy post-divorce situation between mom and dad. Mom was remarried and dad was remarried. Mom's husband was fully accepting of dad and his role, and of things being smooth and workable between them and really functioning as a team. But dad's wife was so wounded, could not allow it.
So it became very controlling. Is that what you mean?
So the good working relationship between mom and dad began to break down, because the dad's wife was not able to tolerate it.
Yeah, that can be very, very it is very unfortunate when that happens. You're right.
It's very painful for the kids, because the kids loved the fact that they could have their mom and dad together sometimes.
Well, exactly. No, I like your idea, though, of bringing, the sort of the new parents and the original parents together in a room. That's something I've never thought of or done before. So that might be a good idea. Yeah. Um, One thing I tend to suggest, or I try to teach the parents of the separating parents, and I wanted to know if you agree with this, is I the whole idea of kind of relinquishing control over what's going on in the other parent's house. Do you
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's one of my I start very early on. And what my kind of catchphrase for that is, you cannot parent over the other parent's doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do, what I do try to align parents around aspects of parenting that are important to child health and development. For example, bedtime. I think you can't parent over the other parent's doorstep. However, if mom lets the kids go to bed whenever they feel like they want to, so they could go to bed at 8 or 12 or 11 or 2,
Mm-hmm.
and dad says you have to be in bed by 8, every time those kids go from moms to dads, they have jet lag.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I try to get the parents, especially very young children, to align around, something like bedtime, so they're not more than a half an hour or so apart.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly you cannot parent, parents have different parenting styles, and you parents have to understand that they cannot control what happens in the other parent's household.
Yeah.
Um, but there are certain things that we try to create some policies about, like, is it okay for my 7-year-old to watch R movies,
Mm.
or R-rated movies, or play R-rated video games? Those kinds of things. We try to have difficult conversations and come up with an agreement between parents about, or things like, use of having one's own cell phone. Like, is it
Right.
okay to give a smartphone to a 6-year-old, or
Yeah.
those kinds of things? But again, you can't legislate that. That you have to appeal
I think
to,
I,
parents.
yeah, I was going to say that I think that's where your child development education,
Mhm,
becomes very, very important, and a great tool to pull out, and just,
mhm,
based on, yeah, the vast education that I've had in child development, I don't think this is a good idea. And, I have additional research here to show you that it's not a good idea. So I think that's a great way to sort of nip that in the bud, and
mhm,
as much as you can, and collaborate on that topic. Then it might not be that, the child has only 15 minutes of screen time that you wish your child to have, but it might be 30 minutes now because the other parent wanted an hour. Like,
mhm.
that's where collaboration, meeting in the middle, all
Right, right.
works so well. Yeah. um what's your view on, I was also interested in this. What's your view on um how much, okay, so uh, like, I have some parents that when they have the child, they do not, and I could think this is age related for the children, but they do not want the other parent calling, during that time, or calling every day, or FaceTiming every day, and or only to be like, this is a common request, for it to be, at 6:30 p.m. every night, or having some sort of real consistent and deliberate time set for that. And another parents go, no, when they're in my home, they're in my home. Do you feel like it's age-based for the children? And
I feel like it's important that the parents realize that it's not about their own territory. And, they're in my home, and therefore it's my child and it's my time. It's the child's time.
Mhm.
It's the child's life. We see this all the time.
Mhm.
And again, you try to educate as much as possible. And if need be, to create some consistent policies that they both agree to follow. But, the children it's their right to have a relationship with both of their parents, the best one they could possibly have. And, when one parent tries to cut the other parent out, during their parenting time, as if that other parent doesn't exist, they're really violating the right of the child.
Mhm. Good point.
I do believe that, certainly there are parents who take, huge liberties, and they'll call the child repeatedly and speak for hours during the other parent's parenting time.
Yeah.
And that also is a huge problem,
Mhm.
because that is undermining the other parent's, the child's time with their other parent.
Right.
But,
Right.
so sometimes that's why it is helpful to kind of, have a policy that both parents sign on to. Yes, we'll talk for 15 minutes at 6:30 every night, and I'll
Mhm.
make the child available, and child will be in a private place, and, and have the freedom to have a conversation with mom or dad.
Right. And I
Um,
mean, that's why it's highly individualistic as well,
mhm,
right? Every couple is very unique in the whatever situation that they're dealing with. I mean, I often have it that the mother has sort of been the primary parent for this child, for most of the children's lives. Let's say that the dad is
mhm,
executive and was
right?
traveling a lot, et cetera, et cetera. So I think again, that child might want to be talking to her mother or his
Mhm,
mother for like you say, hours every evening. Then we build in like a healthy, um, gradual, lessening of that time, right?
right. But you see, it's very complex, and it's what I love about this work. It's like a kind of, five-dimensional chess game. There's so
Hmm.
many different pieces to it. But part of what you need to work on also, especially for a mom, um, who has, really her life's work is been the raising of her children, and that, it feels when the divorce happens and the father wants to step in and, you know make a pediatrician appointment, or, you know
Right.
that he's taking away her job, he's taking away her life. and
Exactly.
and so for those women, it's equally important to help them envision what else their life can contain, how to move forward, how to um, begin to enrich their lives beyond that role of mother,
Absolutely.
to build community, to develop vocational interests or avocational interests, to to develop safety zones in other places so that they can kind of expand their identity.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you have to kind of, that's what's so wonderful about this work, is that you have to work on so many different dimensions at the same time.
Right. There's a lot of moving parts, and I
Mhm.
agree. Yeah. 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 Um, Another question, this is more like moving into the logistics part, but what age would you say it's healthy to start having deeper conversations with your children about why mom and dad weren't compatible? You know, I see this quite often too, where maybe, I mean, they're talking about, you know, I think sometimes the children are way too young to, they don't need to know these details about the
Oh,
couple.
100% not.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, I as part of my work and a part that I really held on to, even as I'm moving a little bit away from working with the very highest conflict families, um, is helping parents create the narrative to share with their children that will help the children understand why, but just enough and not too much, just enough
Mm,
is to help them satisfy their curiosity and have them feel safe and certainly know that parents don't divorce their children. That
right.
if I'm upset with you, you know, we're not getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm. And
it,
even just, oh,
I don't believe, even adolescents, I really don't believe that they need to know
right.
the intimate details of their parents' marriage, why it failed. Um, you know, I mean, I've worked with many families where young children are exposed to, your mother's a whore,
Yeah, I
your
know.
father's having an affair, he's
Mm,
you know, he's a drug addict, he's an alcoholic, a sex addict.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It's so so damaging to the children. You know,
mhm.
in fact, what they should be saying is, yeah, I'm so happy I married your father. I'm so happy I married your mother, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have you.
Right, right. The best thing we did together was we made you.
Yeah. And
And
that's,
and
and
and you have, the father could say you have your mother's eyes and her sense of humor and her,
yeah,
her quick wit. And it's so great that, you know,
right.
I do have parents, I do lots of different things with them, but one of the things I do is have parents who are in high conflict write down 10 things that the other parent contributes to the child
Mm,
that they appreciate,
nice. Yeah.
and even the most hostile parents,
Mm,
you'd be surprised what they can come up with.
yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, they did, partner up for a reason. They did get
Mhm,
married for a reason. And sometimes when you go back to those first couple years of marriage, I like to bring that up too.
mhm,
What was it about your mother or your wife or your husband that, you loved?
mhm.
So it's nice. It's nice to bring that up. Um, so we probably only have about, 5 or 10 minutes left, but I just wanted to touch on the topic of gray divorces.
Mhm.
And would you, first of all, I guess we should explain what gray divorces are, and if you feel like they're on the rise. Um,
I, I don't just feel like they're on the rise. I know they're on
on
the
the
rise.
okay.
Um, you, you look at the statistics, I think it was Pew, um, I don't know exactly the whole name, but they publish statistics of divorces in different age cohorts.
Mhm.
This is like from 2005 to 2015. I can't tell you between 15 and 22 what's gone on, but
Right.
what was very fascinating was that um, in the youngest age cohort, the number of divorces actually went down during that period. In the next age cohort, I think they were stable, but in the age cohort over 50, I can't remember, I think it was like they doubled. It was really,
Wow.
there had been anyway, a very big increase in gray divorce. I think for lots of societal reasons. I don't know, again, if it's the same in Canada as it is in the States, but the gray divorces were absolutely on the rise. And what we don't pay attention to is that there's collateral damage in gray divorce, that there are adult children and grandchildren sometimes who are collateral damage in gray divorce. And there is nothing that happens in the divorce process, except I began to experience as a collaborative divorce professional, I'd be called into gray divorces. And that was fascinating, to meet with adult children and be able to touch base, even once or twice, to hear how the children perceived the relationship between the parents, felt about the divorce, how they were feeling themselves, how it was impacting their lives.
And what was a common, conversation that you would hear them, like what?
The common conversation, I mean, this is a whole other hour.
Right. Yeah. But maybe, this is a setting for the next time I have you on. So yeah, let's just briefly talk about it.
The common themes are many. These adult, first of all, there's rarely anything in the legal process that has anything to do with these kids. You don't need a parenting plan. You don't need to arrange your finances for the kids, nothing, because these kids are emancipated, they're adults. And many, I mean, I cannot tell you the incredible insensitivity I have seen, or the lack of thought on the part of many of these parents about what this means for their adult children. And, so much so that kids, the adult children, let's say college age kids, they don't know like who they're having Thanksgiving with, or where they're going to stay when they come home from, on winter break or spring break. And but it has a huge impact on young adults who are simply trying to begin to launch into their adulthood, and they need some kind of a solid foundation to push off. And meanwhile, the foundation is crumbling, and the kids are regressively pulled back into the family dynamic. And many of these young adults feel very, shaken by it. And yet the whole society essentially kind of says, what do you care? You don't live there anymore. You're a grown up. You don't, and then the young adults start to feel like there's something wrong with how they feel. They feel badly about themselves. Why am I so immature? Why am I a baby? Shouldn't be such. And I've been pretty much over the pandemic, created with through a nonprofit organization called Family support groups for adult children of divorce. And because of the technology, we've been able to have people from all over the world, and Canada. We've had people from Canada, Germany, Belgium, Cyprus, all over the United States, California, Ohio, Midwest, everywhere, join these groups. And we have been able to create like a 6-week just touch base support group for adults whose parents divorced. There's really nothing else out there. Nothing.
Wow.
So that's been amazing.
That's a really good point. I never thought about, the support. Like I was just sort of thinking, individual therapy for these adult children, and of course that would help, but sort of building a whole community around it. Yeah, it's probably very powerful for them.
I think there's something to be um, gained from recognizing and normalizing their experience. And many of the people we've touched base with, like, they've then gone into therapy. Some of them had already been in therapy, but it really is very targeted just to the issues that are raised, like dealing with parents' new significant others,
Yeah.
changing roles, how it impacts your identity, how it impacts your own feelings about your own intimate relationships, and
Mhm.
just really addressing these issues and giving people a chance to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's really helpful.
Selling the family home.
Mhm.
The way the will is now written up, and yeah,
Becoming caregivers to their parents, the changing, role reversal,
mm,
worrying about their parents' finances. I mean, all kinds of things that,
mhm.
and dealing with, remarriages and broken, many of them have, you know, broken relationships with a mother or father around the parents' divorce and around this kind of like, almost instant um, change in their feeling about, who they thought their parent was. Because
Mhm.
they learn, so many of these young adults become confidants for one of
Yeah,
their parents or both of their parents. I mean, try to be mediators between their parents. It's
right.
yeah, it's
It
a
is overwhelming.
mhm.
Absolutely. So what would you hope in terms of like the collaborative law would possibly build another, chapter, or like, I mean, in terms of dealing with gray divorces, another method, another.
I many at least in my practice group,
Mhm.
um, family specialists are, I don't know, routinely, but frequently brought into gray divorces, even though we're not creating a parenting plan and there are no young children involved.
Yeah.
So the family specialist is brought in, the adult children have the opportunity to talk to somebody,
Mhm.
and the parents can be educated on how to, you know, how to protect their adult children going forward and their grandchildren.
Mhm. The grandchildren, right? Okay. Well, I think, yeah, that probably gives us, I think it's very helpful, and I don't think that this is talked enough about, to be honest with you. The whole collaborative practice process. I think there's many people still out there that are that they're not, yeah, they have no idea this is
Where
even.
they don't know it exists.
No, I'm not sure why. But yeah, and again, I think it's just, I think everyone just needs to be like, they have to be educated that that first of all, separation and divorce is not, it's not a failure, right?
Mhm.
Again, this is probably a whole nother episode, but the whole idea that you haven't failed. It's no one wishes that upon themselves. But when it does happen, w- it can be very, yeah, it can be very collaborative, and um
You
yeah,
can deal with it as a problem to be solved, not a battle to be fought.
yeah, nice,
And that,
perfect.
you can see it as a transition in the family into you know, two um, healthy, functioning homes with two parents who continue to protect the needs of their kids and prioritize those, but you see, I think it's partly the culture that has, created this idea that, it's a battle and that, the lawyers are gladiators, and
Mm-hmm.
the person who's been betrayed or hurt needs a protector to fight to win.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I mean, all the lawyers I've worked with and I'm sure all the lawyers you've worked with, are just so thrilled to have this, because at the end of the day, the lawyers don't enjoy this, this high conflict situation either.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift.
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
paradigm shift for the attorneys, and some of them, like Stu Webb, who created collaborative divorce, he did it because it was sucking the life out of him.
Exactly.
He's like, I don't want to live like this.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to war and watch families implode and explode.
Yeah.
And it was one person. It was a think I can moment.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. And again, all for the sake of the children, and the individuals as well, but especially for the children. So, okay.
The children, didn't ask for it. They didn't ask for it. They deserve, it's their right to have, a family and that protects their childhood memories that they
Exactly.
carry into adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. It's their right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, Lauren, thanks so much for your time. I really
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
I
Nice
know
to talk with you, Luella.
you're a very, very busy woman, so I'm glad I got a hold of you. And thank you for all the work that you do. And, as always, I link up everything, all your social media, and I'm not sure. I don't think you're looking for any new new clients, but we'll direct them. They'll have a place to go. We'll make sure they can find you and your book.
Yeah.
I encourage everyone to pick up a copy
Mhm.
of the book, because I think that's going to, like in the title, will give you the skills that you need to have when this situation
You
arises.
find yourself in that kind of
Yeah.
high conflict situation, and you really want to get out of it.
Yeah.
Because that book is addressing, even if one parent wants to pull themselves out of that high conflict situation.
Wonderful. Yeah. Again, thank you so much for your work, Lauren, and for meeting
Welcome.
us here today.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Luella.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.